In the headlines, search and rescue operations are underway in Yunnan province, southwestern China, following a 6.1 magnitude earthquake that's taken the lives of more than 400 people and injured over 1,800 others. In the face of a fast-spreading Ebola outbreak in Africa, Korea steps up monitoring of those returning from trips to affected areas. And the KOSPI is having a pretty good run on the Choi Kyung-hwan effect. How long will it last? Nomura Securities speaks to Primetime News.
Welcome to Primetime News. Hope your week is off to a great start. I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Kang Tae-ri. Thanks for tuning in. We begin with the rising death toll from the devastating earthquake in southern China as rescue workers continue efforts to locate survivors.
With more, we now turn to Paul at the news center. Paul, what is the latest on the search operation?
Well, according to local government authorities, 398 have now been confirmed dead and almost 2,000 injured. This as Beijing dispatches another 2,500 troops to aid the massive relief operation. The powerful 6.1 magnitude quake struck China's southern Yunnan province in the densely populated city of Xiaotong on Sunday afternoon. It had the deepest impact on Ludian County, where Xinhua News Agency estimates that about 12,000 homes had collapsed. A major search and rescue operation has since been launched, but rescuers say they're still struggling against torrential rains and landslides. It's still unknown how many people could still be trapped under the debris, as rescue teams have yet to reach remote communities in the area. Red Cross branches in Hong Kong and Macau are also sending relief supplies, with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon offering to mobilize any international support if needed. Chinese authorities have scaled up their disaster response to the highest national level to address the aftermath of what is being described as the strongest earthquake to hit the region in 14 years. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang visited the worst-hit area on Monday afternoon to oversee relief efforts, while President Xi Jinping has ordered authorities to make all-out efforts to save as many lives as possible. And moving on to West Africa, where international efforts are struggling to contain the worst Ebola outbreak on record. Officials from the WHO are acknowledging the situation as a health crisis, but insist that it's not too late to stop the epidemic. Meanwhile, the Korean government is also taking steps to make sure the virus stays outside its borders. Our Kwon So-ah has the details.
Too fast to get under control. The Ebola outbreak in West Africa, already the deadliest in history, is spreading at a threatening speed. The latest reports show more than 50 people were infected with the virus from July 28th to the 30th in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. International efforts to contain the virus have accelerated in recent days. African leaders and the World Health Organization are working hand-in-hand on a response plan, while the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has announced it is sending at least 50 experts to the region in the next 30 days. In Korea, the government held an emergency meeting this Monday to discuss the growing health crisis. The health ministry announced that around 550 quarantine rooms will be prepared at 17 hospitals nationwide. Increased monitoring through thermal cameras will take place at Korea's airports, and passengers will be asked to fill out questionnaires about their health. The government has also advised people against traveling to the affected regions and said that the 170 or so Korean residents already there should be restricted from re-entering Korea if they show signs of the disease. The outbreak in West Africa has already killed at least 826 people and has a mortality rate of around 55%. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And finally, turning to the crisis in Gaza, a unilateral ceasefire declared by the Israeli government is fully underway as a civilian population attempts to recover from the ongoing conflict. However, shortly after the 7-hour truce began on Monday morning, a Palestinian refugee camp in Gaza City was reportedly hit by an airstrike, killing a child and wounding 30 others. The Israeli military said it was investigating the incident. The humanitarian window was meant to help some 470,000 people who have been displaced due to the widespread destruction of homes. The announcement comes after an Israeli strike hit yet another UN school on Sunday, killing at least 10 people. UN relief agencies say more than 1,700 Palestinians have been killed since the Israeli military offensive began last month, while some 66 Israelis have also died from constant rocket fire by militants against Israeli cities. And that wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
On the KOSPI, we've had a pretty good run going up to the highest level in 3 years this past week. And we actually have a report that says the KOSPI at its 3,000-point level by next year's end is not so far-fetched. And we have Michael Na, Korea strategist from Nomura, who is actually the author of this report, joining us. Thank you so much, Michael, for coming in.
Thank you.
So you obviously think that the Choi-nomics, the Choi Kyung-hwan effect and his policy package is what's pulling up this market.
Right. I think the market is definitely getting excited about the Choi-nomics, his expansionary policies, especially the dividend yield side of it. He wants to boost the dividend yield of Korean companies. Korean companies are known for pretty poor shareholder return policy, and Choi wants to change that. And if it does, then we think that the KOSPI could go up to 3,000. And it's very simple math. If Korean companies pay out 50% of their earnings, then dividend yield would go up to 5.2%, which means that the income funds globally will see this as a very attractive investment proposition. So they will come into Korea and start buying.
So it could be good for the asset markets, and obviously, and that's what you're watching for. But some critics say that it may not be big enough for the actual growth of the Korean economy. What do you say to that?
I think the package itself, the stimulus package, might be a little too small for the Korea GDP to go up significantly higher. However, I really like the fact that the Choi Kyung-hwan said that he will maintain the expansionary policy until people change their mind about spending.
So do you think that the companies listed on the KOSPI right now are capable of paying out these high dividends to make this market go up to the 3,000 level? I mean, we celebrate whenever it goes up above the psychologically important 2,000 level mark. You know, which companies will bring this index up?
I think, yes. A lot of the Korean corporations, they are sitting on an excess capital, in my mind. So they can definitely pay out more. Some companies, I think they should pay out 100% of their earnings, and that should not impact their core operation at all. Especially for financial institutions in Korea, they're heavily capitalized. They have so much excess capital, they can pay out 100% of their earnings right away. And also, if you look at Samsung Electronics, now they're generating very good free cash flow, which means that they can pay out maybe 100% of their free cash flow, and they should be fine as well. Same thing with the Hyundai Motor Group companies. Hyundai Motor, Hyundai Mobis, Kia, they're all sitting on a cash balance, and their cash generating ability is at a point where they can start paying out dividends, and that should not have any issues with their core operation.
But is that more of a short-term view? Because it wasn't so long ago when the conglomerates and corporations of Korea were penalized for being undercapitalized and getting into debt-to-equity ratio problems.
Well, that was Asian financial crisis. That was a long time ago. And since then, a lot of the companies, they have become global competitors. And I think that their cash-generating ability has improved significantly.
Okay.
And so part of this Checkonomics also involves giving increased access to capital to households in the form of cheaper loans. Do you think that would have a contributory effect to this KOSPI 3,000, or do you think it's not necessarily a good way to go?
I think if the government provides cheap loans, that should actually help the disposable income of the households. And at the same time, I think housing market could actually get a little bit of boost as well. I think the housing market and the construction sector has been going through a correction for the past 5 years or so, and I think it's a time that it should turn around.
And do you think, just to go along with this mood of pursuing expansionary growth, do you think the BOK will move this month, just at least as a symbolic gesture?
Our base case is that, yes, the BOK will deliver a 25 basis point rate cut in August, and if that is not enough, I think they will move for another rate cut by the end of this year. But we think that the current level of rate is already accommodative. So at some point, they will have to normalize the rate, which will be probably end of 2015.
All right, looks like there's going to be a lot more action in the market. Thank you so much for your insight tonight.
Thank you for having me.
As you just saw, the KOSPI closed up today, as well as investors are pinning hopes on the new economic policy package. The index actually enjoyed its biggest rally in 3 years last week, as we just talked about. But in this next report, we break it down and look at what makes up the KOSPI's capitalization, and we see a clear shift away from good old-fashioned manufacturing players. Yunnan has more.
The benchmark KOSPI broke the 2,080 mark last week for the first time in 3 years. But that's not good news for everybody, as data analyzed by Corporate Tracker CEO Score show that former heavyweights in the traditionally strong petrochemical, steel, and shipbuilding sectors are faring poorly. They used to be among the main building blocks of the Korean economy, but their market cap has slumped in the past 3 years. Market cap for IT companies, on the other hand, jumped by the biggest margins. Market superstars Samsung Electronics, which take up about 15% of overall market capitalization, rose by over 60% during the period. And the world's second biggest memory chip maker, SK Hynix, and Korea's leading online portal operator, Naver Corporation, both saw their market cap jump by over 100%. But the market value of POSCO, Korea's largest steel maker, shrank by nearly 27% during the period, while that of the world's biggest shipbuilder, Hyundai Heavy Industries, dwindled by over 60%. This has naturally led to a shift in the proportion of market cap by each industry. While the IT, automobile, petrochemicals, and shipbuilding and steel each took up a similar share of the KOSPI market cap back in 2011, the market cap is now mainly led by the IT sector, which accounts for more than a quarter of the overall market. Companies in the petrochemical business saw market cap shrink by over half to 6%. Yunnan, Arirang News.
While the Korean government is focused on reflating the economy, many seem to argue and agree that there needs to be fundamental and structural reforms to set the groundwork for long-term growth. Our Hwang Jae spoke to Tom Byrne, Senior VP of Moody's East Asia, for his take.
The aggressive fiscal policies of Korea's new economic team will get consumers spending again and help build confidence in business over the short term, says Tom Byrne, a senior analyst at credit rating agency Moody's. He questions, however, whether they will bring about the fundamental changes needed to pull the economy out of its low growth rut.
Over the long run, I would think that other aspects of the policy package would be more important. In particular, the new economic team's focus on economic innovation, such as reducing the debt level of public institutions. There's also regulatory reform, I think, is important over the long run, particularly, a regime that is predictable, less burdensome.
Regarding government measures to tax corporate cash reserves, Byrne said carrots are better than sticks when it comes to policies.
They know that they would get a higher return on a productive investment than they would just by sitting on cash balances.
While the new set of economic stimulus comes amid concerns that the Korean economy might follow in the footsteps of Japan's 20 years of lost growth, Byrne says Korea is not the only country suffering from the slow growth trap.
I think just about every economy is facing the prospects that growth will be slower now than it was before the global financial crisis.
About concerns that loosening home loan restrictions could worsen the nation's household debt problem, Byrne believes they aren't warranted for now. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Curry's comments came in response to
Your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang Sean Lim and Kang Chae-ri from the heart of Seoul.
Begins now.
Primetime News, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Korea continues to be the country with the largest income gap between men and women among OECD countries. Korea's gender income gap in 2012 stood at 37%, the highest among 11 countries whose figures were compiled. That means Korean women are paid only 63% of what males earn on average. Korea has remained top of the list for 13 straight years from the year 2000. By country, Japan came second with a gender wage gap of 27%, followed by the U.S., Canada, and the United Kingdom. The remaining 23 OECD members have yet to compile their figures.
The peak summer vacation season has begun here in Korea, and over the weekend, Incheon International Airport set a new record of visitors going in and out of the country. Son Jung-in has more.
It's early in the morning, but the departure gate at Incheon International Airport is already crowded with vacationers leaving the country for their summer holidays. And fortunately for them, strong winds and rain brought by this season's typhoons didn't stop flights operating to their normal schedule.
I saw people waiting in long lines at the check-in counter. I couldn't wait that long, so I used the unmanned check-in system.
With the summer holiday season in full swing, the number of passengers using Incheon International Airport reached an all-time daily high over the weekend. It recorded a total of 158,000 passengers on Sunday, breaking the previous record of 156,000 set the previous week. Compared to the record daily number of tourists set last year, the figure represents a 10,000 increase. Experts attribute this recent trend to the surge in low-cost carriers and also to the strong local currency. To deal with the growing number of outbound travelers, the airport has stationed 6 additional security checkpoints and opened its outer parking lot. As the summer peak season continues until mid-August, officials plan to open check-in counters half an hour earlier at 6:30 a.m.
We estimate the daily number of passengers from airlines data to better prepare and provide the best service, especially during peak hours.
Officials advise passport holders to process their documents through the unmanned screening system to make the immigration procedure easier and less time-consuming. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
And speaking of air travel, the number of low-cost carriers in Korea has exploded over the past few years, but they have generally kept their services short-haul. But recently, many are getting into servicing longer-distance routes. Our Na Hyung-kyung explains.
Competition in budget airline market is becoming fierce in Asia, and Korea is no exception. That's why low-cost carriers are looking for a new source of profits, and launching long-haul flight services may be an answer for some, like Jin Air. The low-cost subsidiary of Korean Air is gearing up to offer non-stop flights to Hawaii next year. Budget airlines going long distances is still a difficult nut to crack, but Jin Air's senior vice president of PR, Emily Cho, says it's all about putting passengers at ease over safety issues.
Of course, before we can convince them, we have to make sure that our services are ready to deal with the long haul as well. Since it's something new, they have to get used to it. For example, our pilots need 1,000 hours of previous experience to even apply to Jin Air, which is the same as Korean Air. So that shows how much we are dedicated to our safety record.
Jin Air opened its doors for business in 2008, and it took 2 years before it began operating in the black. All 5 low-cost carriers in Korea, as of last year, are making profits, testimony to the continuing boom of the LCC market in Korea, but there's a catch.
Southwest or JetBlue. In the U.S., the main reason why they were able to grow this big is that they were using the minor airports because of cheaper airport fees. But all the airlines are focused between Incheon Airport and Gimpo Airport in Seoul, for example. In China and Japan, because the population itself is big enough, there's a lot larger pool of those maintenance people or flight attendants.
In order to survive in this very tough market, Cho says Jin Air needs to make its name more known to potential customers overseas.
The Korean airlines have a very good reputation among the Chinese people, and we're hoping to kind of bond with them emotionally first. So they want to come to us first instead of us coming to them.
The competition in this market will only get worse, and successfully launching flights to Hawaii will be key in locking down sustainable growth for Jin Air. 나현경, Arirang News.
Korea's main opposition party has a new leader, if only temporarily. Park Young-sun, the current floor leader of the New Politics Alliance for Democracy, has been chosen to head the party's Emergency Planning Committee, which was formed after its defeat in last week's by-elections. She will be at the helm until a party convention is held to select new leaders. The party's co-chairs, Kim Han-gil and An Chol-soo, resigned last week over the results of the by-elections. The chairwoman of Hyundai Group crossed the border into North Korea this Monday morning. Hyun Jung-eun made the one-day trip to the Mount Kumgang Tourist Resort to attend the 11th anniversary memorial service in honor of her late husband, Chung Mong-hun, who used to operate a cross-border travel business. Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency reports the visit was to be limited to the service. Neither she nor the 22 Hyundai executives in her delegation had any plans to speak with any North Korean officials. Hyundai hasn't operated tours at the Mount Kumgang Resort in North Korea from 2003 until they were suspended in 2008 after a South Korean tourist there was shot dead by a North Korean soldier.
Welcome to sports. Let's start with the League Climbing World Cup 2014 in Austria. South Korea's Kim Jae-in finished second in the fourth round on Sunday. Kim entered the finals with the highest record, but struggled in the 40th and the 41st hold, losing the lead to Magdalena Rock of Austria. Out of the 4 World Cups this year, Kim took first place in 3 of the events and won second place finish. Now back in Korea, she'll be preparing for the IFSC World Championship in Spain next month. Now over to baseball. It's time for Monday's KBO matchup between the Nixon Heroes and the LG Twins in Seoul. Starting the pitching game, Kun-min Char for the Nixon Heroes and Shin Jung-rak for the LG Twins. The Nixon Heroes strike early, scoring the second inning with Kim Min-sung with the double and RBI. But the glory short-lived. LG dominates in the bottom of the second, making the score 4-1 with a couple runs. Bottom of the fourth, Nixon comes back in the game with a 2-run homer by Kang Jung-ho, tracing by a point, 4-3. LG holds on to the lead with the final score, 6-4. Meanwhile, 3 other games scheduled were canceled due to rain. Next up, some PGA action. The final round of the Bridgestone Invitational was held Sunday, where Rory McIlroy shooting 66 to take home the title and the #1 spot in the world. Starting off the day, Sergio Garcia led by 2 strokes, but McIlroy wiped that deficit out like a champ, with 4 birdies in the first 5 holes. With this win, McIlroy became the 13th player with a major and a World Cup World Golf Championship, and now joins Tiger Woods as the only players to win them in consecutive starts. McIlroy finished at 15 under 265 to win $1.6 million, leaving him just $765 short of Bubba Watson on the PGA Tour's money list. And that wraps it up for me. This has been Kim Hyun-bin. Check out for more updates for the world of sports.
Good evening. Typhoon Halong is on its way and is supposed to be the 3rd strongest in the Pacific so far this year. This typhoon is expected to influence Jeju Island and parts of the southern regions, and with heavy rain and strong winds on Friday. So do be sure to tune in throughout the week to stay on top of the latest warnings on the storm. But until then, rainy conditions today in the capital will clear out by tonight. However, it looks like showers will be sticking around for a bit longer over into the southern regions. Now, after this wet system, tomorrow we can expect a sunny day with daytime highs mostly up into the 30s. Now, going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will start off the Tuesday morning at 25 before reaching up to 32 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will top out at 32 and 30 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops over to 31, Dokdo hits 29, while Mangkeungang tops to 31. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park and have a wonderful evening.
And that's Primetime News for this Monday. I am Kang Tae-ri. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Sean Lim. Have a great evening. We'll see you soon.